I never thought my perfect suburban life could unravel so fast. I'm Abigail, living in a picturesque Connecticut home, with a garden that's my sanctuary. A place where I escape the loneliness of my husband Mark's constant business trips. But while he's away, the quiet of our empty house grows heavier, and the lines between right and wrong start to blur under the warm sun and blooming roses. A fleeting moment, a forbidden touch, has turned my world upside down, leaving me drowning in guilt as Mark's car pulls into the driveway. What does he know? And can I keep my secret buried before it destroys everything? Picture this. The faint hum of a lawnmower in the distance, the scent of freshly cut grass weaving through the air, and me, Abigail, standing at the edge of my world, a world that, for now, feels as steady as the earth beneath my feet. I'm 36, a woman who's carved out a quiet kind of happiness in a charming suburban home in Connecticut. My husband, Mark, 38, and a marketing executive with a knack for climbing corporate ladders, is often halfway across the country, sealing deals while I'm here, nestled in a life that's as familiar as the back of my hand. 10 years of marriage have woven us into a comfortable tapestry. Loving, yes, but maybe a touch predictable. Mark's heart is in the right place, always, but his mind, that's usually on the next big pitch, leaving me with long stretches of silence in our beautiful home. Our house is a haven, a 2-story slice of suburban dream with a sprawling garden that's both our pride and our neglected child. We adore it, Mark and I, but time is a luxury neither of us seems to have. The roses bloom with a fierce kind of beauty, the hedges stand neatly trimmed like soldiers on guard, and yet, it's not our hands that tend to them. I work part-time as a freelance graphic designer, sketching logos and layouts from the comfort of my home office, which means I've got plenty of quiet hours to fill. Most mornings, you'll find me out in that garden, a steaming mug of coffee in hand, letting the world slow down just for a moment. It's my sanctuary, a place where the chaos of deadlines and unanswered emails can't touch me. The sunlight filters through the leaves of an old apple tree near the patio, casting dappled shadows on the ground, and I can breathe. Really breathe. About 6 months ago, we decided the garden deserved more than our half-hearted attempts at upkeep, so we hired Victor through a local landscaping service. He's 45, tall and weathered, his skin etched with the stories of years spent under the sun. At first he struck me as unassuming, a man of few words who let his work do the talking. And oh, did it speak. Victor transformed our yard into something out of a magazine, every detail meticulously crafted, from the way he pruned that apple tree with surgical precision, to the vibrant marigolds he planted along the fence, their golden petals catching the morning light like tiny bursts of fire. Mark and I couldn't stop raving about him in those early days. We'd stand on the patio, arms crossed, marveling at how he'd turned a patchy lawn into a masterpiece. "Worth every penny," Mark would say, and I'd nod, grateful for the beauty Victor brought into our little corner of the world. But with Mark gone so often, the house can feel like an empty shell, its walls echoing with the absence of laughter or late-night conversations. My work keeps me busy, sure, but there's only so much satisfaction. I remember that morning so vividly. The air crisp with the promise of a new day, though it carried a weight I couldn't quite name. Mark stood at the front door, his suitcase packed and ready, the wheels making a soft rumble on the hardwood as he adjusted his tie. He turned to me, his eyes warm but distracted, and leaned in for a quick kiss. His lips brushed mine, familiar yet fleeting, and he murmured, "I'll call every night, Abigail." "Promise," I nodded, forcing a smile, my hands lingering on his shoulders for just a second longer than usual. Then he was gone, rolling his suitcase down the walkway, the car door slamming shut with a finality that echoed in my chest. I stood there, watching the taillights disappear down our quiet street, a pang of loneliness settling in like an old friend I didn't want to see. But I shook it off, or at least I tried to, turning back to the house with a deep breath. Work waited for me, and so did the garden, my refuge, my distraction. By 9 a.m., as the sun climbed higher, I heard the familiar crunch of gravel under tires. Victor was here, right on time, his truck pulling up with that same steady reliability I'd come to expect. I stepped onto the porch, a mug of coffee still warm in my hands, and waved to him with a friendly smile. He nodded back, his face half-shadowed under the brim of his worn cap, and got to work without a word. That was Victor, quiet, focused, always about the task at hand. I watched him for a moment, the way his hands moved with purpose as he unloaded his tools, before retreating to my office to tackle a looming deadline. But my mind kept drifting to the garden, to the solitude of the house, to the empty space Mark had left behind. The first few days of his 2-week trip to Chicago passed in a blur of routine. I buried myself in design projects, sketching and tweaking until my eyes burned. But I couldn't ignore the silence that seemed louder with each passing hour. I found myself outside more often, wandering through the garden under the guise of checking on the roses or admiring the marigolds. Victor was there, of course, tending to the yard with his usual precision. At first, our interactions were the same as always, brief, polite, nothing out of the ordinary. I'd bring him a glass of iced tea on warmer mornings, and we'd exchange a few words about the weather or the state of the hedges. But then, I started to notice little things, small shifts. His conversation stretched a bit longer, his voice a touch warmer than before, and his eyes, those weathered hazel eyes, seemed to linger on me as I turned to head back inside, a gaze that felt heavier than it should have. I told myself it was nothing, just my imagination running wild in the quiet of Mark's absence. But by the third day, something happened that I couldn't so easily dismiss. A few days have passed since that unsettling moment in the garden, and it's now a warm Friday evening, the kind that wraps you in a gentle embrace, but leaves a restless itch under your skin. I've had a particularly lonely week, the kind where the silence of the house feels heavier than ever. Mark's been gone for over a week now, and even though we've talked on the phone, his voice feels like a distant echo, not enough to fill the void. I miss him. Miss the sound of his laughter, the way he'd absent-mindedly hum while reading reports at the kitchen table. But tonight, I can't shake this gnawing restlessness, like I'm pacing the edges of something I can't name. After dinner, I pour myself a second glass of red wine, the deep crimson liquid catching the last glimmers of daylight as I swirl it in the glass. The alcohol warms my veins, loosening the tight knots of inhibition I've been carrying all week. I step out onto the patio, the wooden boards cool under my bare feet, and settle into a chair to watch the sunset. The sky is a canvas of orange and pink, streaked with gold, as if it's trying to distract me from the storm brewing inside. I take a slow sip, letting the rich, tart flavor linger on my tongue, and glance toward the garden. Victor's still out there, finishing up some late work on the flower beds near the back fence. His silhouette is a dark outline against the fading light, bent over with a shovel, his movements steady and deliberate. I tell myself I'm just curious about the garden's progress, that I just need a distraction from the quiet. But deep down, I know it's more than that. I stand, glass in hand, and start walking toward him. The grass is cool and slightly damp beneath my feet, tickling my soles as I cross the yard. Crickets chirp in a rhythmic chorus, their song blending with the faint rustle of leaves in the evening breeze. The air carries the subtle scent of lavender, sweet and calming, though it does little to steady my racing pulse. As I get closer, Victor looks up, his face shadowed and unreadable in the dim twilight. I force a casual smile, raising my glass slightly, as if to signal I'm just here for a friendly chat. "Hey, Victor," I say, my voice a little too bright. "Those roses are looking incredible. You've got a real gift." He straightens, wiping his hands on his jeans, and offers a small nod, but there's something in his gaze that pins me in place, something I can't quite decipher. We talk for a moment about the flowers, the new mulch he's laid down, the plans for a trellis near the patio. It's safe territory, or at least it should be, but then the mood shifts, quick as a cloud passing over the sun. He steps closer, his voice dropping to a low murmur, rough around the edges. "You know, Abigail, the garden ain't the only beautiful thing out here tonight." My breath catches, a sharp little hitch in my chest as his words sink in. I should laugh it off, step back, Make some excuse about needing to check on something inside. But I don't. I stand there, rooted to the spot, as his hand finds my waist again, just like it did a few days ago, only this time there's no mistaking the intent. His touch is firm, deliberate, pulling me gently toward him, and my heart thunders so loud I'm sure he can hear it. I freeze, my mind screaming at me to pull away, to remember Mark, to remember who I am. But my body betrays me, caught in the heat of the moment, in the way the starry sky above seems to blur at the edges. He leans in, his breath warm against my neck, sending a shiver down my spine that I can't ignore. His lips graze my skin, a forbidden whisper of contact that sets every nerve alight, and I feel myself unraveling. In that moment, under the vast, uncaring sky, I give in to the pull, to the rush of something I've been missing for far too long. Here I am, Abigail, standing at the kitchen window, my hands gripping the edge of the sink as if it's the only thing keeping me grounded. The days after that night in the garden have been a blur. A tightrope walk between pretending everything's fine and feeling like the ground could crumble beneath me at any moment. Life is supposed to be slipping back to normal now that Mark's trip is over, but normal feels like a foreign word, a lie I'm trying to wear like a second skin. My heart hasn't stopped racing since that evening with Victor, since I let myself fall into a moment I can't take back. And now, with Mark coming home today, the weight of my guilt is a stone in my chest, heavy and unyielding. I hear the front door creak open, and my breath catches. There he is, Mark, stepping into the house with his suitcase trailing behind him, his shoulders slumped from the long flight. He looks up, and a tired smile spreads across his face, the kind that still warms me despite everything. "Hey, sweetheart," he says, his voice rough with exhaustion, and before I can overthink it, he's crossing the room to pull me into a hug. His arms wrap around me, familiar and strong, the faint scent of his cologne mixing with the stale air of travel. I press my face into his chest, forcing a smile of my own, but my stomach churns with shame, a sickening twist that threatens to unravel me right there. I'm terrified he'll feel it somehow, sense the tremor in my touch, the way my embrace is just a fraction too tight, like I'm holding on to more than just him. I pull back, meeting his eyes, and every word I speak feels like a minefield. I'm hyper-aware of my tone, my expression, every little gesture. "How was the trip?" I ask, my voice brighter than it should be, and he shrugs, muttering something about long meetings and delayed flights. I nod, probably too eagerly, and busy myself with grabbing him a glass of water, anything to keep my hands occupied so he won't see them shake. But inside, I'm a mess, second-guessing every syllable, wondering if he can hear the guilt woven into my words, if he can see it in the way I can't quite hold his gaze for long. Out of the corner of my eye, I catch movement outside the window. Victor's there in the garden, as he always is, raking leaves with that same steady rhythm, acting like nothing's changed. But I know better. Every so often, I see him glance toward the house, his eyes finding mine through the glass for just a split second before he looks away. It's a silent reminder, a tether to that night, to the heat of his touch and the rush of forbidden longing that I can't seem to bury. My skin prickles with unease, and I turn away from the window, pretending to fuss over something on the counter. I've been avoiding going outside when he's there, making up excuses to stay indoors. Laundry that suddenly needs folding, a client email I just have to answer right now. Anything to keep distance between us, to keep from facing the reality of what happened under that starlit sky. Mark's voice pulls me back to the present as he mentions the garden, casual as ever. "Looks like it's in good shape out there," he says, nodding toward the window, and I flinch, a tiny, involuntary jerk that I pray he doesn't notice. My throat tightens, and I manage a weak, "Yeah, it's been fine." But even that feels like a betrayal, a half-truth that burns on my tongue. Then comes the moment I've been dreading. He leans against the counter, sipping his water, and asks, "Victor been doing a good job while I was gone?" My heart stops, just for a beat, and I feel the heat rush to my face, a flush I can't control. I stammer through a response, something like, "Oh, yeah, he's been great, same as always." But the words trip over themselves, clumsy and unconvincing. I turn away. Here I am, Abigail, stepping out into the garden under the cover of a late night, the air cool against my skin, carrying that faint, earthy scent of damp soil and blooming flowers. I'm wrapped in a soft robe, my bare feet brushing against the dewy grass as I wander aimlessly, unable to sleep. The moon hangs heavy in the sky, casting long, eerie shadows across the lawn, stretching and twisting like silent specters watching my every move. I've come out here hoping the familiar comfort of this space, my sanctuary, will quiet the storm in my mind. Ever since that night with Victor, guilt has been a constant companion, gnawing at me, and with Mark back home, every moment feels like I'm teetering on the edge of a cliff, waiting for the fall. I shuffle along the path near the patio, my hands tucked into the pockets of my robe, when something catches my eye. A tiny blinking red light, barely visible, tucked under the eaves of the house. My breath hitches, a cold prickle of dread creeping up my spine. I step closer, squinting in the dim light, and my heart stops as I realize what it is. A camera. A small hidden device I've never seen before, its lens pointed directly at the garden. My mind reels, 1,000 questions crashing into me at once. Who put this here? How long has it been watching? I feel exposed, violated, as if the very walls of my safe haven have turned against me. Panic sets in, and I start searching, my movements frantic, my breath coming in shallow gasps. I comb through the yard, my eyes darting to every corner, every shadow. Near the old apple tree, I spot another one, its red light winking at me like a cruel secret. Then, by the shed at the far end of the garden, a third camera, positioned to capture every inch of this space. My hands tremble as I stand there, the weight of this discovery pressing down on me. 3 cameras, hidden so carefully, covering every angle of the yard. This isn't random. Someone wanted to see everything. My thoughts spiral, and a name slams into me with sickening clarity. Mark. It has to be Mark. But why? Why would he do this? I've never given him a reason to distrust me, or at least I thought I hadn't, until now. Until that night under the stars, when I let myself slip into a moment I can't undo. My stomach churns as I rush back toward the house, the cool night air no longer a comfort, but a biting reminder of how exposed I am. I push through the back door, my robe flapping behind me, and head straight for Mark's office. The light is still on, a faint glow spilling into the hallway, and I find him there, hunched over his laptop, his face illuminated by the screen. He doesn't look up as I burst in, my chest heaving, my voice already shaking with a mix of fear and anger. "Mark, what are these cameras in the garden? Did you put them there? What the hell is going on?" The words tumble out, raw and unsteady, and I see his shoulders tense, his fingers pausing over the keyboard. Slowly, deliberately, he closes the laptop with a sharp snap that echoes in the quiet room. And when he finally meets my gaze, his face is a mask of stone, his eyes hard in a way I've never seen before. He leans back in his chair, crossing his arms, and for a moment he just stares at me, the silence between us thick and suffocating. Then, in a voice so low and controlled it sends a shiver down my spine, he speaks. "I installed them before I left for Chicago." I had a feeling something wasn't right. You kept mentioning Victor, just little things, but enough to make me wonder. So I set them up, just in case my knees feel weak, the room tilting as his words sink in. He suspected something. He was watching. My mind flashes to that evening, to the way the moonlight danced on the grass, to the forbidden warmth of a touch I shouldn't have craved. I open my mouth to deny it. Here I am, Abigail, sitting at the kitchen table the morning after everything came crashing down. The air feels heavy, like it's pressing against my chest, making every breath a struggle. Mark sits across from me, his hands wrapped around a mug of coffee that's gone cold, his eyes fixed on some distant point beyond the window. Neither of us speaks. The silence is a living thing, thick with all the words we're too afraid or too broken to say. The faint tick of the clock on the wall is the only sound, each second stretching into eternity, marking the distance that's grown between us overnight. I can still feel the sting of last night's confrontation, the way his voice cut through me when he admitted to seeing everything on those cameras, the way my own stammered excuses fell apart before I could even piece them together. Finally, he breaks the quiet, his voice low and rough, like he's been up all night wrestling with his thoughts. I fired Victor this morning, effective immediately. He's not coming back here. I nod, my throat tight, unable to meet his gaze. I don't know if I'm relieved or if this just makes the ache worse, knowing that the physical reminder of my mistake will no longer haunt the garden. Mark takes a slow breath, his fingers tightening around the mug. And I deleted the footage from the cameras. All of it. I don't want to hold on to whatever that was. I don't want to see it again. His words hit me like a punch, the weight of what he's implying sinking deep. He doesn't want to relive the evidence of my betrayal, doesn't want it lingering in our home like a ghost. I swallow hard, my hands trembling in my lap, and manage a faint thank you, though it feels hollow, inadequate for the damage I've caused. He looks at me then, really looks at me, and I see the pain etched into every line of his face, the shadows under his eyes telling me he's as shattered as I am. But I need time, Abigail, he says, his voice cracking just slightly. I need to think about whether I can forgive this, whether we can rebuild what we had. I don't know if I can trust you right now. My heart twists, a sharp, searing ache that steals my breath. I want to reach across the table, to grab his hand and beg him to stay, to tell me we'll get through this. But I don't. I just sit there, frozen, as the reality of his words settles over me like a cold, unyielding fog. I've broken something fundamental between us, something I'm not sure can be mended. I watch, numb, as he stands and starts packing a bag. The sound of the zipper on his duffel is deafening in the quiet house, each pull a reminder that he's leaving, even if just for a few days. He's heading to a hotel, he says, needing space to clear his head. I follow him to the bedroom, standing in the doorway like a spectator to my own unraveling life, watching as he folds a shirt with mechanical precision, as if this is just another business trip. But it's not. This is personal, raw, a wound I inflicted. When he slings the bag over his shoulder and turns to me, his expression is unreadable, a wall I can't breach. I'll call you in a couple of days, he mutters, and then he's gone, the front door closing with a soft thud that echoes through the empty house. I stand there, rooted to the spot, listening to the sound of his car pulling away, feeling the walls close in around me. This house, once a haven, now feels like a prison. Every corner holding memories of laughter and love that I've tainted with my choices. I wander outside eventually, drawn to the garden despite myself. The morning sun is bright, almost cruel in its cheerfulness, glinting off the dew on the grass and making the roses glow with a beauty that mocks me. I walk slowly along the path, my fingers brushing against the velvety petals, the scent of earth and blooms filling my lungs. But there's no peace here. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoyed this story. This will help us create more engaging stories for you.